we're going to be looking at speakers or loudspeakers. So we're going to be looking at many different aspects of loudspeakers. Let's start from the beginning, which is always defining a loudspeaker. What is a loudspeaker? I don't know if you remember, we looked at those different blocks. There was 5, and we looked at block 2, 3, and 4 were the sound system blocks, and block 4 was the output transducer. So a loudspeaker is an output transducer, which means, I got a few speakers here today, which means that we go in with an electric signal. This is the same speakon we looked at the other day. From the amp we go into here. It's electric when it gets here, and when it gets out of here, it's an acoustic wave or a mechanic energy. So we have a transduction or a conversion of energy from electronic to mechanic. So that's kind of defining a loudspeaker. A loudspeaker is a transducer. Therefore, understanding its function is the departing point of understanding why we need it and how it functions. The different aspects of a loudspeaker, we're going to look at several of them today. So let's start with about, I think, 6 or 7 different fundamental concepts about the loudspeaker. Loudspeaker is an electroacoustic device made up of one or more drivers. So it is an electroacoustic device because it takes electricity and makes it an acoustic energy or acoustic waves. But as you can see here, it's made up of few sections. In this specific monitor, which is a Genelec monitor, is made up of 2 sections. Smaller sections, which would be the driver for the high frequencies, and a second driver which reproduces the lower frequencies. So let's just repeat the definition. What is a loudspeaker? It's an electroacoustic device made up of several drivers. Every driver reproduces a specific frequency range. You remember we looked at the frequencies and the charts and all of that stuff. So for one driver to do the whole frequency range between 20 and 20,000, it's quite a difficult task because it can do a good portion of it, but not very well. So the way technology, obviously this is within the limitation of this type of design. There's other designs, and I don't want to go into there, but the most conventional design, like the speaker that I just picked up, would be compressor drivers, 1 and 2, one for the high frequency, one for the low frequencies. Now, the reason why this is important is that if you don't understand that the speaker is made up of different sections or drivers, then we don't understand how it functions. So we have different drivers which each reproduce a different portion of the frequency range. So every driver is an output transducer with a specific frequency range that it reproduces. Now, to cover the audible frequency range, a loudspeaker uses a number of drivers, each one covering a section of the frequency range. Each of these sections is called way or band. So we have a two-way band, a two-way speaker or a three-way speaker. Let's just look again at this one. This one is a two-way speaker because it's got 2 bands, band number 1 and band number 2. Or way number 1 and way number 2. Each way or band is allocated to one driver, okay? But that's not always the case. For instance, I got another speaker here to confuse you a little bit. In this speaker here, we got 3 drivers. 1, 2, 3, okay? So how many bands do you think we have? We have 2. Because these 2 drivers are doing exactly the same frequency range. Therefore, even though it's 3 drivers, it's 2 ways. Okay? So this speaker is a 2-way loudspeaker, not a 3-way, even though there is 3 drivers. So do not confuse the amount of drivers with the amount of ways. Okay? Why is this important? Because different section of a loudspeaker would therefore have been allocated to different ranges and therefore would perform differently. Okay? So did you get the whole difference between ways and drivers? So you can have 2 drivers covering 1 way. So if I say we have a 2-way speaker, it means that in this speaker there's one or more drivers covering a specific frequency range. Okay, I'll give you an example here on the screen. In this picture here, you got the green curve. Can you see that one? And then you got a red one. Okay, so this is actually pertaining a system, and this system is essentially made up of, for now, let's just say 2 ways. The way number 1 made up of what you see there with the green line, and way number 2 made up of the red line. Now, they at some point one crosses over to the other. So where the 2 ways meet in the specific here is between a sub and a loudspeaker and a normal top speaker. That point is called crossover point. Now, some of the reason why I'm mentioning this terminology is that you have to get used to it, because later on we're going to speak about ways of drivers or crossover, and then you might be confused. So that's why I'm kind of going through the terminology. So, for instance, in this specific case, the crossover frequency is about, let's quickly look, it's about 100 Hertz. So if you can see around 100 Hertz here, the red and the green line meet. There is 100 Hertz, and the green and the red line meet. So the crossover point is 100 Hertz. Now, theoretically, those 2 points should be meeting at -3 or -6, depending how you measure it. Because remember, in the decibel scale, -3 plus -3 equals 0. Every time the same level, a level doubles, is +3. Do you remember that old conversation? Every time the level doubles, we have an increase of +3. If it halves, it's -3. If we're on the 10 log equation. So if we were at -3 on the one way and -3 on the other way, so the sub, for instance, and the top, at 100 Hertz, they both meet at -3. -3 plus -3 will give us back to 0, meaning that that gap there, that little dip, will go back to 0. Now, this is obviously totally theoretical. It's not necessarily true in practice, but the whole idea is to cross over in a seamless way so that you don't hear where the one speaker ends and the other one starts. Okay, you get this thing of the crossover? Now, for instance, this speaker here. This speaker is also it's a 2-way with 2 drivers, similar to this one. Now, what I want to show you is the specification of this speaker. Let's quickly go there. It's called the MP1 of it. It's a LAN speaker. This is the MP1. Now, for instance, if you read there, one other thing we will read there, there's a number of stuff, we'll refer to this a few times. But it says that crossover frequency 3,400 Hertz, meaning that at 3,400 Hertz, the one driver stops, kind of rolls out, and the other driver rolls in. So that frequency is called crossover frequency. Okay, you got it? Now, this is kind of important because if you understand the whole thing of crossover, so before I go on, in this speaker, therefore, there is a crossover, one crossover point, because this is a 2-way speaker. If this was a 3-way speaker, now there is a 5-inch, let's quickly read there. It's a 1-inch silk dome tweeter. Let's say there was a 10-inch driver also at the same time, which was covering the lower frequency. Then we would have had 3 drivers, and we would have had 2 crossover frequencies. Okay? You got that? Now let's go back to the example that I showed you earlier. Here with this picture, we look, there is 2 bands there, the green band and the red band. The green band is displaying the frequency range of the sub, while the red band is displaying the frequency range and behavior of a top speaker. Okay? But the top speaker will have built in itself a crossover point between mid frequency and high frequencies. So even though on this specific chart we only see one crossover point, that is just a crossover point between the sub and the top speaker. Okay? Had we had to refer to this system as a whole, we would be talking about a 3-way system, because the top speakers are two ways, high frequency, mid frequencies, and the sub extend the frequency range to a third band or way. So we will be talking about a three-way system. Okay? Are you getting your mind around this? Cool. It's kind of not particularly complicated to understand, but just terminology that helps us later to grasp other principles.